Well, here we go. We got an interview now with Jill Gower, and Jill Gower heads up and leads East Anglia Friends of Israel, which I'm part of as well. A group of us helped to found that in March 2016. And so, hello, Jill. Good to see you.
Hello, Paul. It's good to be with you.
Excellent. Jill, just as a snapshot, can you sort of give us an idea for those that may even be seeing and hearing this for the first time? Just a snapshot of how East Anglia Friends of Israel came about and its purpose then, its purpose now, and possibly its purpose moving forward.
Yeah, definitely, Paul. I think because of what has happened in Norwich, which has been very key for many of us to come to terms with, because obviously Norwich is where the blood libel began in 1144, when the Jewish people were wrongly accused of murdering a Christian boy called William. And subsequently, much persecution, many deaths, and it did lead, of course, to the expulsion of the Jewish people from the United Kingdom for 366 years.
Hmm.
So it was a very important and very key and awful event that the Jewish people had to live through. So the history of Norwich has been very much tarnished because of that. And of course, in recent times, we found the bodies thrown in the well in the shopping centre, which confirmed the persecution that the Jews had gone through all those hundreds of years ago.
Wow, that's quite incredible, Jill. Um,
Mm.
I hear there's a documentary based around that. Is it available on YouTube? Is it The
It
Body
was,
Tellers?
funny enough, brought about by the BBC. It was called Bones in the Well.
Okay.
Cold case. They did a series of cold cases,
Mm.
and this particular one was called Bones in the Well, and that is now, I believe, on YouTube.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, isn't it? The fact that this isn't just a hearsay, we have factual evidence
Yes.
and documented
Mm.
evidence as well, which is quite something. You know,
Absolutely, absolutely. And there was a lot of controversy, as always with these things. But having worked with the Jewish man who got the bones released finally to be buried in the Jewish cemetery here in
mm,
Norwich, just before he died, he had phoned me and he said, Jill, I'm so pleased to report they have confirmed that they are undoubtedly Jewish.
wow, it's incredible because it's sort of mixed emotions as well at the same time, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And at the same time, the conversations during this period, because of course we've got a situation where East Anglia Friends of Israel has come to birth
Yes.
as an organization of different individuals that have worked in this area over a number of years. And then suddenly all of these things are sort of bubbling to the surface at the same time.
Mm, mm,
We
mm.
got things happening in the political realm happening. We got the devil
Absolutely.
coming to the surface as well. Um, do you think that that sort of helped the relationship between, say, the Christian community and the Jewish community within Norwich? The fact that
I
we're
think
having
it's
dialogue and so on, and these things are all happening at the same time.
I can't stress how important it's been, Paul. And I think when we had our very first meeting,
Mm,
and there was over 300 people there, including, I think, over 30 from the Jewish community.
mm,
And um, I think it was just such an eye-opener for them. I think the history runs so deep. We
mm,
don't realize how painful that trauma is, and how all these centuries later, because of the persecution the Jewish people have always seemed to go through, that those wounds are incredibly deep. And
mm,
I think what happened that particular night when so many Christians chose to stand with the Jewish people,
mm,
and also with the right for Israel to be a nation. Well, as you know, many were in tears, and it was a very, very moving event, and it meant so much. So these
mm,
these friendships, they take time, And but eventually, I think they are so worth it because it's meant incredible amount to the Jewish people to know the support that they have from groups like ourselves.
Amen. And especially the lead up to that first meeting, and the first meeting itself was foundational, really, in launching East Anglia Friends of Israel, because of the Shalom Declaration and
Yes.
that contains our
Mm.
relationship with Stephen Jaff. Do you want to just share a little bit about that?
Yes, I mean, Stephen is just such an incredible character, and he launched obviously Friends of Israel in this nation and has worked incredibly hard to build up these friendships. And they've really just been so powerful in crossing that divide. And
Mm,
um, especially now, Paul, when we think of how this whole anti-Semitism has just risen again, and things we're seeing today we never thought we'd see.
mm,
But I'm thankful that we had those relationships already in place before the current situation. So,
mm,
uh, for the Jewish people, it means that they know that they're not alone, and that
mm.
speaks volumes to them at the moment
Yeah.
because
And I
they're
think
finding it so very hard.
And not surprisingly. And I think at the same time, I think it's good to add that East Anglia Friends of Israel is not an evangelistic Christian missionary organization or anything like that. We're very much bridge builders and into building relationships, and very much caring for the person as an individual, as well as a community. And do you want to just share how that has actually helped that building of relationships?
Yes, and again, these things don't happen overnight,
Mm,
and you have to build up trust. And I think that is true of all groups, but I think especially when it comes to Christians befriending Jews,
mm,
because they always think, is there an agenda going on
correct.
here? And now I think they are very comfortable with us because they know that we don't have that agenda. It's not part of who we are. Other organizations, of
Mhm.
course, it is. And that's fair enough because I think if you stipulate who you are and what you are right from the beginning,
Very
then
much
fine, that's
transparency is
absolutely
key
fine.
in building trust. Yeah,
Yes, yeah, you put the writings on the tin sort of thing.
yeah.
But for us, it is purely relationship and it's honoring and respecting one
Mm,
another.
mhm,
And actually I just feel a real honest, deep love for the Jewish
mhm.
community here in Norwich, and I'm sure you do as well. They've
Extremely.
become very dear friends.
Yeah, very much so.
And it's so important to stand together
Mm,
because obviously Christians are not without being got at, and we know that it's
very
probably
much
down
so.
the road going to get a lot worse as well.
Mm. And especially for us as Christians that are aligned with the subject of Israel
Yes.
and the Jewish people.
Mm.
It's like sometimes it comes as a matter of a default position. The
Yes.
fact that we will be challenged on why do you get involved?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
why do we get involved, Jill?
I think that firstly, the most obvious one is because it is written
Yes.
in our scriptures, and God makes it very clear. His purposes have always been for Israel, not just until Jesus came, but all the way through. And from a biblical perspective, we know how important Israel is. Jesus will return to the Mount of Olives and his purposes will be outworked there.
Mm,
Um, but we have been grafted in, and that's such an honor. And I think that we have to, like Paul writes in the New Testament, we have to respect the debt that we owe to the Jewish people.
amen.
And the ultimate aim is to bring forth one new man, Jew and Christian. And so, from a godly perspective, that's always really important. And I think also from a just being wanting to be righteous, we see so much bad press and lies being bandied around. You know, Israel was legally made a nation.
That's correct.
And, you know, they were given that land. And in fact, they only received 20%
Mm,
of the land that should have been allocated to them through the Balfour Declaration.
mm,
So here we have this very tiny
mm,
piece of land in the Middle East where there's so much controversy and so much hatred.
mm,
And it's very heartbreaking to see the biased press and the influence on people against Israel. It's very, very unfair. And that's not to decry the hardship of the normal Palestinian people either. You know, they are just caught up in this horrible mess as well.
mm.
And of course, we feel very sorry for them.
Yeah, I think
But
that's
we
a
have to
subject.
remember we're
Yeah,
against terrorist groups here.
very, very much so. But I think that's a subject we might actually look into another time, Jill, because
Yeah.
um, to use even the word Palestinian can be quite toxic at times as well, because there are so many misunderstandings of what is a Palestinian anyway.
Yes.
So whoever uses it is not actually being transparent or even given a balanced
Mm,
historical foundation for that word either.
that's
Even
right.
even in recent history,
That's
because at
right.
one time when you use that term, it was automatically assumed you were talking about somebody that was Jewish, a Palestinian
Yes.
Jew,
Mm, mm,
and and of course that has all changed.
yeah.
There's an automatic assumption the other way, but then also a misunderstanding of the different factions and groups and so on, and ordinary people being caught up within what is going on as well. And I think it's important to also stress that I think East Anglia Friends of Israel is very much a speaker of truth, of
Yes.
justice, of
Yes.
bringing education into the situation with the various seminars or events that we put on.
Yes,
But
totally.
also, we have a relationship at times with the Israeli embassy. But
Mm,
from day
mm,
one, we always said that we will say
mm.
when we don't agree with things as well.
Yeah.
And because, as you know, automatically you can be called a Zionist, and even that word can mean so many different things to so many
Absolutely.
people as well. All these loaded words, it is a we walk a tightrope at times, don't we, Jill?
We do indeed, and I think the for us as believers, I think it's very important for us to see
Mm,
this as a spiritual battle, and it makes no sense in the natural, and you have to recognize that there's something more going on. Even, we mentioned lovely Stephen Jaff, who's an Orthodox Jew, and he and I both have come to the same conclusion. It's a spiritual battle.
very much
He
so.
sees that very clearly, um, and it is because it does not make sense when you analyze what is going on, and anti-Semitism does not make sense.
No,
And
not in the
the
natural.
rise of it in this nation is just beyond belief. I never thought I'd see this in all my life.
Mm, mm. Even though it is written,
It is written. Absolutely.
as we've said.
Absolutely. You know, the
Okay.
Jewish people in this country, they are generally speaking, you always get some, of course, but they're generally speaking very hardworking
Mm,
and great contributors to society and
very
tend
much
to
so.
keep themselves to themselves and very much blend in with the nation. You
Yeah.
know, I'm always amazed in the synagogue services. Every week they
Mm,
will pray for the royal family and for the nation.
mm.
They're very loyal to the country.
And I think that some of those hallmarks that you've just highlighted, um, we resonate with me of the hallmarks that we've experienced through the continued building of that relationship with the local Jewish community in Norwich.
Yes,
Individuals
absolutely.
there as well.
Absolutely.
Honest, open, warm, and yeah, we've had nothing but a lovely welcome there.
Absolutely. They have been so hospitable
Mm.
and absolutely opened the doors for us and incredible. incredible. I've been blown away at times by it.
So let's just bring it up to date um, uh, with a situation of a certain trip coming up in Rome. How did this come about, Jill? I mean, it's definitely a new phase for East Anglia Friends of Israel. I think it's very much par for the course. In other words, I believe it's part of the expanded journey that we're on. There was a meeting some time ago where we felt we were rebooting, especially
Yeah,
post COVID.
yes,
And it's very much, I think we're seeing that outworking.
yes, we are. Yeah.
Very much so. So, can you just give it a little bit of background of how this trip to Rome has come about and what it is about and what you have been asked to do on behalf of East Anglia Friends of Israel?
Yeah, sure. It all came about through a man called Dr. David Gerby. And I was asked by two Jewish members of the local synagogue, would East Anglia Friends of Israel host him coming to speak to us? And he sounded a very interesting man, and we said yes. He was one of the last to be forced to leave Libya. 40,000 Jewish people were thrown out of Libya and very badly persecuted.
Mm.
And David now lives in Rome. He has had several trips back to Libya. He had it on his heart to rebuild the synagogue that was completely broken and destroyed.
Mm.
And Gaddafi actually he met with him, and Gaddafi promised him safe passage, but unfortunately that didn't really happen, and he had to leave Libya again
Mm.
rather quickly. It wasn't a nice situation. Um, and David is hosting this conference in Rome to commemorate, obviously, the events of the 7th of October. And it's all about trauma and healing. And this is such an important part. We can see all the fighting and all that side of things
Mm.
that is going on at the moment. But the deep wounds and hurts and pain of people is going to take a long time
Yeah.
to process and to heal. And this conference is sort of addressing those issues. I say unfortunately, but it was very harrowing to watch the screening of some of the events that happened on the 7th of October. And for those people that were involved to recover from that is
Mm.
going to take a long time.
Mm.
And of course, it still continues in that region. And these things are so important to address and to try and help that healing process.
Mm.
And I do think for the Jewish people, I've obviously thought a lot about, what's happened to them and praying about things in Israel since the 7th of October. But I think that the Jewish people were just sort of recovering in a way from the Holocaust.
Mm.
Every Jewish family had been so badly affected by that. And I feel they were just sort of really getting over the depth of some of that. And then this happened. And it, it's um, it's very hard to imagine what it must be like for those that are caught up in these sort of tragedies.
Mm. Mm.
Very hard, and they saw things. A lot of them, the young people that survived that attack, obviously they saw things that nobody should ever have to
No,
witness.
no. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? With war or conflict of any kind, the trauma sometimes never recover.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
but
Well, and
it's
that's
very,
worrying, isn't it?
but it's very important that for us as believers as well that we provide help to bring justice to that situation.
Yes,
Not
yes.
just in physical terms, but internally,
Mm,
to help restore that some sort of humanity within,
mm.
um, to bring some sort of normality, if possible, through bringing the right resources in, or at least having the conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm,
And that's not taking away from the fact that obviously in any war, both sides are going through the
mm,
same sort of thing. We're not decrying that for a
no.
moment. It's a horrible, horrible situation in
Mm.
every single way that you look at this.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that most people get a very binary understanding of what is
Mm,
taking place.
yes.
It's very black and white for them. Um, for some people, it might help them manage it, even though it might be based on a false narrative.
Mm, mm,
Because, as we know, that whole region is very diverse
yeah.
in its Islamic understanding,
Mm,
secular understanding, and whatever,
everything.
and nothing's ever simple. And also, in the midst of all of that, you have many innocent people that are used as pawns, and
Totally.
that's the same in any conflict quite often as
Yeah,
well.
totally. Totally. And it's always sad when
Mm,
those that are not directly involved in fighting, um, the normal civilization when they get caught in the fire, it's
mm,
horrible.
mm,
But it happens in every conflict, and certainly, we were told by Colonel Richard Kemp that
mm.
the numbers in Afghanistan far exceeded what is
Yes,
happening right now.
very much so.
And, but it's this that's making the headlines.
Mm,
But
mm,
I think you asked, what was the role for us East Anglia Friends of
mm,
Israel in Rome? And I think, Paul, it's just to encourage others to um, support the rights of Israel to be a nation, which is
mm.
always being challenged, and to definitely to stand up against the anti-Semitism that is going on and is really, really awful worldwide. It's suddenly exploded to something that is unspeakable almost.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it's an awareness that we need to have. I think
Mm,
it's again, it's another part of that conversation that needs to be had with our wider communities, to shed a light on what is really happening in our world.
mm,
And because without understanding, how can you actually bring any form of reconciliation?
exactly.
I mean, we're aware from our own backgrounds that in some ways we could get pessimistic,
Mm.
is where we could be simplistic and say, well, we've seen the end of the book, as it were.
Yes.
But there is a call on us and a command to basically to come against injustice.
Yes.
And that is very much what we're doing,
Mhm.
standing with our Jewish brothers and sisters. And there is that call upon us, and I feel that it's very there's no get out clause.
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
once you receive that understanding, there's no get out clause.
Exactly. Exactly,
Mm,
Paul. And we were there and since obviously it's got very much worse to hear the
mm,
stories what's happening in our universities,
yeah.
especially our local one here. It's just
Mm,
been
mm,
unbelievably awful for the Jewish students right now.
yeah. So I think it'd be also a good idea just to thank our supporters on our mailing lists as well. And just want to say a few words about those that have been on our mailing list for so long now, which we're building up again. We want to expand, but how about a short word for just those that receive those messages and try and encourage us?
Oh goodness, we couldn't do this without them, and we're just so very grateful for the
Mm,
support of those who are part of East Anglia Friends of Israel, who support the meetings, who give financially into it as well, and enable us to build those relationships which are at the heart of East Anglia Friends of Israel.
Mhm.
Um, I think relationship is what we're all about,
Very
so
much
it's with
so.
our those that are members and those who support and those who come and speak and share, and of course the Jewish community. It's all about relationship, and that's the heart, I hope, of East Anglia Friends of Israel.
Oh, very much. I think that's a good way of summing things up. And so thank you to all our supporters and thank you, Jill, and all the best in Rome. And we look
Thank
forward
you.
to the feedback when you return. And I
Thank
look forward to
you.
chatting again like this. So
Thank you, Paul.
take care, Jill. Bless you.
Okay. God
See you
bless.
again soon.
Bye.